Before saying anything, we have a guest today. Andres, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
This is an exciting episode number 5, with YASO Music.
That's right.
And we're going to get much more into that here in a minute. But today, with this podcast, we're talking about FKJ, and you actually introduced us to this artist.
Yes. Yep.
It blows my mind that for an artist that's able to have 250 million views on a video, you think that's a lot of people watching, a lot of eyes. I wasn't one of them. And it really makes me think how many other brilliant artists are out there that I do not know about yet. And they're currently active. It's not like, I know about all the greats. When I learned about this guy, I felt like I was in the dark and I had just come into the light, and he is so brilliant. And who wants to start? Who wants to start with this guy?
What's interesting with him, I had heard that big video that we watched. You remember the name of it?
This was it. The song was it Tadao?
Yeah, it was
It was
Tadao.
Tadao. Yeah.
With Masego.
With Masego.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had heard most of the music from that video, but I'd never heard of FKJ.
Really? So you'd actually heard his music before?
I'm pretty sure the video had come up like on a recommended thing.
So I think most people had heard of that song, at least. It was a very popular song.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
And so it's something that you can have a piece that's so well known, but people are still just like, I don't know who you are.
I thought maybe
Totally.
he just wasn't being pushed in our area or something. I'm
know,
like, who is this guy?
I mean, French guy being pushed in the outskirts
What are your search
of
results?
Texas.
right. Well, and by the way, I mean,
Yeah.
what does FKJ stand for?
French Kiwi Juice.
Yeah.
I always thought it was fresh Kiwi Juice,
That's
which made sense to me.
No, it
fresh.
is ethnic Kiwi Juice.
But he
French.
is French.
Yep.
And it's an interesting name. I actually really like that idea. I wish I knew the backstory behind that name.
Yeah, I don't know the backstory behind that name.
That's why we should have called him and had him come here to be a number 4 on this
exactly.
podcast.
He would be chomping at the bit to get on this podcast.
Yeah.
Living his life wherever he is right now. Stay safe in COVID. So I have been really inspired by FKJ, and just apologies if I end up saying FJK or anything throughout whatever.
Just disclaimer.
I've said it
Yeah,
so many
disclaimer.
Throw it
times.
out there.
It's tough. We got in-ears. Tanner and I got in-ears for the first. You've had in-ears for a while.
Well, I've used in-ears in the past when
Yeah.
playing for churches, all that sort of stuff. But I for a long time have felt like having in-ears for you and me would be the next thing that would allow us to take playing live music to the next level. And for anybody who doesn't know what in-ears are, they're just headphones that you wear while you're playing music so that you can hear a metronome click so that you can play along and play more in sync with each other.
But they make like a sound barrier so you can't hear anything else outside.
Yeah,
of them
they're sound
very well.
isolating.
Yeah,
I think
unlike AirPods or something. They're
Right.
not gonna, give you the...
Right. A fun random fact. I'm full of these today. I have a lot of these planned. The Beatles, I think, were the first people to use onstage monitors.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I think.
You mean in-ear monitors?
No, not
Like
in-ears.
onstage.
You mean wedges?
Yeah, wedges.
Okay.
In-ears being kind of the next stage, the more sophisticated stage to on-stage wedge monitors.
Yeah.
Because apparently a lot of people, started having hearing problems and stuff.
Yeah.
Apparently, with
that's
wedges.
the other big.
With the monitors? Like the
Yeah.
wedges?
Yeah, that's the
On-stage
other big
wedges.
reason for the in-ear monitors is to protect your hearing, because obviously unless you're blasting the mix that's in your in-ears, it will protect you from when you're playing live and the sound is just cranked to 11.
Yeah.
Right, especially when, just being a producer, which I'm sitting here with 2 producers. I'm not one of them. And I'll get there. You have to take breaks and stuff and take care of your ears.
Yeah,
That's what
totally.
that's what I've heard tons of producers say.
Yeah, totally. The worst part is when you get the volume levels wrong, and
Right.
in an instant,
Yeah.
everything is as loud as I can be.
Yeah.
Like you hit
As loud
play
as it
and
can
it's
be, and it
at
just,
11.
and then you pause it right away, and you're like, "Well, that's it. I have to take."
It's like that moment of like fight or flight,
Right,
where you
yep.
realize that you done messed up.
Right.
Right.
Or
You're
like
I
when you
just screwed my ears up.
Yeah, or when you turn on the monitors with phantom power on a
Yeah,
really
yeah,
sensitive mic on, and
Yeah.
it does the feedback, and you
Right.
just yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That That would be painful. Well, in-ears, apparently you can hurt your ears wearing those too.
Yeah.
Obviously, because you can turn them up really loud. But
Exactly.
Totally.
they help a lot being able to block out, loud sounds, protect your ears, put it at a volume that you want, and hear a click. And it has been changing the game for us. I'm
That's
such
awesome.
an in-ears fan.
And this gets brought into the equation by FKJ because that's one of his primary sources of music making.
Yeah, so this is the first answer to the question, how to be FKJ. Wear in-ears.
In-ears and live looping being a kind of a central
Totally.
piece to
Right.
the music making process.
How do you do live looping if you're FKJ? He uses Ableton.
He does, yes. So what I've read on FKJ, not JFK, is he kind of prides himself a lot in a lot of original music, and also like instrument. Obviously, with live looping, you can input MIDI, right? You can play keys and stuff, and but he likes to start with instruments. Like live instruments, saxophone being one of them, guitar, right?
I swear I'm going to learn sax just because of him. That's my
One
next
day
thing.
we're gonna
It's
do.
my dream too, yeah.
We're gonna do dueling saxes. We can triple
Yeah,
saxes.
yes, exactly.
I was
Right.
talking with a lady the other day who
Yep.
said the saxophone is a pretty easy instrument to play
Yeah.
compared to so many others, like the trumpet or trombone or things like that. She's like, you just blow into it and like
It
do
is
stuff
true.
with your fingers.
You have the reed, and
Yeah.
the only difficult part of it is that the reed. You have to get that reed wet, and
Okay.
you have to have. It's basically it's what is making the initial sound. If you it's easy to get it wrong if you're biting too hard on it. I've saved so many tutorials. on
You're
this
like, I'm
already.
gonna be
See,
ready.
and I've
I'm ready
never
for this.
looked into it, and I'm really on board with the saxophone thing. And one day I'm gonna pull it out. Nobody's gonna be expecting it. Then
There you go.
Tanner's gonna pull
Yeah.
one out. We're gonna
But
have
now
like
they're gonna be expecting
two
it.
little stands. Listen, Tanner,
You're not going to be
listen.
expecting it.
No one's gonna be expecting it.
The few people that hear this.
Right, exactly.
Right.
be expecting
right.
it, yeah.
But he uses Ableton. What
Yes.
is Ableton?
Ableton. Well, it's a DAW, and for those who don't know what DAW is, it stands for.
Digital Audio Workstation.
There you go.
There
There's
you
that
go.
non-producer.
There you go.
See, I'm just in my learning stage.
Right.
But yeah, it's just like other digital audio working stations like Logic.
Things that help you record.
Right, there you go. Yep. Probably the most popular level, or like level 1, is like GarageBand, let's say. One that's like comparable.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about Ableton is the live looping, right, sessions that it gives you. Obviously, that's what FKJ uses. But also, it's extremely analog. And I know, like, you've been looking into Ableton and stuff, and it's very, very analog, right? Like, the way it's designed, and I think FKJ like he gives these vibes off of like starting from scratch every time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it's never.
He's completely building it out.
Yeah.
As you
And
see it.
Ableton gives you that, I think. It doesn't, like, the default plugins that it has are always like just from zero, right? Like, here's the canvas, do what you want with it.
Which
Right.
can be like the source that, like, I
Yeah.
know a lot of people will kind of feel overwhelmed, and me included, when
I
they
was
first
very overwhelmed.
open
Yeah,
up
yeah.
Ableton. And that's kind of typical for a lot of, music making software, but
Yeah.
Ableton especially.
Especially, yeah.
And that's part of, I could definitely see that with it being part of the analog
Mm-hmm.
feel. Part of analog is that, it's not all just on a little menu digitally.
Yeah.
It's laid out before you, so it looks like a lot.
Totally.
But then when you break it down into its individual parts,
Yeah.
you see how it actually comes together in a way that just really makes a lot more sense.
Right.
Yeah.
But let's see what's implementable here. Like, how accessible is Ableton? Was our version of Ableton completely free?
It was, it alternates depending on the
Yeah.
sale of the year that they have, but it's $60 to $90.
So even the low tier one that we had to pay for.
The low tier, I got it for free. Like, so let's say you get a MIDI keyboard, which is just a piano keyboard that lets you input basically computer information. And so you can play a piano or you can play a trumpet on your keys, depending on what you assign to it. And so a lot of MIDI keyboards will come with Ableton Live Intro.
So that's free that way too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
there's a lot of software that comes with that.
yeah,
So this
and
is something
that's
that's
how
like-
I got it.
Visit your local music store, find a MIDI keyboard that is
Yeah.
maybe affordable or rentable, get Ableton from that, and then just watch a bunch of YouTube videos.
YouTube tutorials are everything. Yeah. And honestly, it's actually really funny. I don't feel old, but this is one of the things that makes me feel like, am I starting to?
Here we go.
Because in 2014 or whatever, I think it was around that time that I started getting into trying to figure some of this stuff out.
In 2014.
In 2014,
Sorry,
when
keep
I was
going.
looking on the internet,
Right.
there weren't very many, almost any tutorials on how to figure Ableton or Main Stage or Logic out.
Really?
There were some, but they were all bad. They were all really bad. And then I went, and so then I just eventually learned by self-teaching and picking up some YouTube videos here and there. And then I went back with Ableton. I'm going back and trying to use YouTube to learn that now, since I'm used to Logic instead. And there's just so many more videos that are so more well curated, crafted, and thought out, and it explains how to use the software in a coherent manner. And so it's, continually more and more doable if you're willing to just, sit there in front of it. Like that's one thing. I'm having a good time while I'm sitting there trying to figure it out. And so if you're just begrudgingly going through it, you're not really going to get through it very well.
I'm having a good time sitting, 8 feet behind you on the couch, doodling on the guitar while you're figuring it out.
Yeah, I'll just be like, why isn't this working?
Yeah.
That's a really good point to get into Ableton and just to get started with a MIDI keyboard. I didn't know what MIDI was before we started learning about Logic and all of these DAWs, and I bet most people don't know what MIDI is.
Right.
But I think I started in the wrong place. I think that the biggest thing, if you want to be FKJ, there it is. There
French
it is.
Kiwi Juice.
Right, French Kiwi Juice. You need to be French.
You need to
be
be French.
French.
I thought you were going to say you need to be friends with him.
and you need to have dreads. Okay.
Two
This is an
very
thing.
important things.
Yep.
Necessities.
You probably also need to be into essential oils and
Yeah. Oh,
very
yeah.
hippie.
Okay.
And,
Right.
That would definitely help.
Yeah, 100%.
Fun fact here.
That helps with
for
the
y'all.
aesthetic on the video.
This is one of those facts that I had prepared for us.
Okay, nice.
So Bob Marley invented dreads in the 70s. So that came from him. I found that on the internet.
I want to
I was
know
gonna
the
say-
source for this one.
Yeah, I was going to say, wait, where did you find this again?
It was actually the first thing I found when I
Fact
Googled
check.
like all about dreads, and
Yeah.
it said Bob Marley like introduced dreads to media, but then I dug like barely any deeper, and it was like
Sounds
dreads go back as far as people go
This
I was
back.
going to say, sounds like a conspiracy.
If this tells
Right.
you anything about how white Cameron is.
Right, yeah, exactly. The first thing that pops up is Bob Marley.
I'm sorry for everybody listening. But okay, we can move past that. That was a stupid joke. Let's keep going.
That was beautiful.
I think it helps a lot to have, this is so obvious, but to have a huge video, to have a video go viral. The 250 million views I mentioned earlier, which sounds like a daunting number and just a crazy reality. I mean, I would tie that in with like just this whole image here. He seems like a fairly new name. It's not like he's been around for 20 years and he has a huge video.
But he has a pretty big discography, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So that's the thing that's surprising with that song To Now, because the story behind it actually is he went to play with Masego to open a show, I think with Masego in Denver. And I think during that time, I think Masego was playing the song actually. And FKJ was like, hey, he's like, let's get into a room and let's add some more stuff to it, And so they created the song in 12 days. Yeah, they got into a room, created the song in 12 days, and they added...
Really?
A lot of it was very experimental, just like live looped. Yeah.
kind of improv,
Yeah, just very improv.
which seems like a big piece to FKJ's
totally. Yeah, it's
whole
huge.
setup. Yeah.
Well, I did read that he's a self-taught musician, and there was this one video, Tanner, where you and I were like, is he also really good at videography? There's no way. But it kind of makes sense because he's 30. He's been around long enough to learn two skills, music and video. So it's not that far-fetched. He learned cinema.
Really?
Yeah, he learned about
wow.
cinematography for film. That was when he learned, I think I remember this correctly, his first sound design type stuff. His first musical introduction was, I think, in college, learning about film.
Oh, cool.
Music for film, scoring films.
I was going to think it was the other way because, so he did another video where they went and shot an entire music video in you might have seen it, the Bolivia salt flats.
Yeah, that was sick. That was
so
insane.
cool. And
I don't think I've seen this one.
Oh, this one's crazy.
it's pretty much,
Were they on a bunch of like motorbikes, like driving around?
No.
Never mind. Keep going.
They were playing music, but it was in, so you know what salt flats look like?
Yeah.
Just kind of as far as I can see, just kind of like white.
Beautiful when it rains a little bit.
Yeah, and there's also, there's some water like up to here as well.
And you get the reflection and
exactly
all that on the water.
Yeah, it just looks otherworldly.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and nobody had ever really shot a video like that, which is funny because he literally just went somewhere in nature and shot it.
Yeah.
But
that is funny.
When he was talking about it, nobody had
He
shot
caught the
in
low-hanging
salt
fruit
flats.
that nobody was seeing.
Yeah, and he mentioned, like, somebody in an interview was asking him what that process was like, and he was like, well, I showed up about an hour before we shot it, and just
man.
And he said the production team showed up the day before and had everything ready, and I was just like, that would be nice.
This makes me
Production
think
team showing up beforehand.
everything OK Go has ever done for any of their videos, like the difference in scale there is just
Oh yeah. We'll have to do OK Go for one of these.
We will. I love them. Love them so much. I need to write them down. I'm gonna write them down
right now.
I feel very old thinking about it.
Have you listened to OK Go at all?
Yeah, but like years ago.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's funny. I don't think anybody actually listens to them more than they just see the music videos.
Right. No, totally.
Yeah.
It's kind of turned into that. I mean, I love them, but I don't get into the car or put in my headphones and go to OK Go.
They got a couple schlappers though.
I like Skyscrapers a lot, but let's definitely save that for their episode. Where are we going with this?
Yeah, but I was waiting.
Instead.
I was waiting for you to just finish writing that note, figuring that we were probably going to edit this chunk out.
Definitely. None of this is live, of course.
Right.
Of course.
This is all live.
Of course.
Let's see. Have dreadlocks,
Important.
be French, use Ableton. So if you wanted to be somebody like him that makes really nice videos, which actually, I'm shocked that he has a huge discography. For anyone that doesn't know, I mean, you can Google what discography means, but it's the collection of, I believe, all the music that someone's released.
All the releases, yeah.
I was thinking he had a really small one, but I didn't find an actual official list. I was thinking maybe in the last 8 years, he's released like 20 songs. I could be wrong. It might be higher. Because it's shocking, like Wikipedia doesn't cover him very well. And I love that Wikipedia. I was under the assumption that he has fewer songs and he creates less, but everything he creates, he kind of goes all in creatively to make something that's really high quality, which I find a more high risk, high reward mentality that really doesn't work for most people. And a lot of artists think that way, like everything I make needs to be quality, and they end up making almost nothing, or they end up releasing almost nothing. No, at the end of the day, they make almost nothing compared to people that prioritize quantity a little more. But it seems to have really worked for FKJ.
Yeah, right.
I mean, even if his number is between 20 and 30 songs in 8 years, and then he's got like 12 or 13 videos, and again, he's gotten huge off of that.
Yeah.
That's shocking to me.
Totally.
And I guess nobody's able to fully get all the different reasons for why that is. I mean, I know that when he started, he was like at the top of his genre because he like started this new genre of like French house music
Yeah.
or something.
One of the things that he prides himself in is, and his friends would tell him this all the time, that he would basically, he can kind of insert himself into any genre. But he prides himself in, I'm trying to remember what it was called, like expansive groove or something.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. One of the big characteristics of his music is he has that sort of, a lot of people will say more electro sound or house music.
Yeah. Right.
But a lot of his early influences being more about jazz, a lot of blues, according to what stuff that he said in interviews.
Right.
And the thing that happens is when you're creating on a computer, most of what you're doing, you're not usually recording the live instrument. Like, So if you have drums, you're not necessarily just going to go record the drums, but you'll just have the drums at your fingertips and you'll play those. And so having those more kind of acoustic, or not acoustic, but like jazz and that sort of stuff as influences, but then having electronic things at his fingertips is kind of the blending of what turned into that sort of sound and led to the sort of genreless groove feel that most of his music has.
Right, totally.
I don't know how to implement that outside of just being talented.
Well,
I mean, that's tough.
That's an important thing, because I do think he's. I always hate. Hate's a weird way to phrase it, but the word talent.
Yeah.
Because so many people throw around talent
As if no work was put in.
Exactly, as if no work was put in. But I do think that for him, there is a level of talent where, just based on interviews and the way he kind of approaches it and talks about it, it seems like music is something that he's somewhat of a savant at. To be like he's picked up instruments in a way that makes it seem like that's his primary instrument on almost every single one of them.
Well, I feel that there are people that, they're born being able to feel the beat, and then there are people that have to learn to find the beat.
I'm the second one.
Do you think that people are, this is a good one. Do you think that, so it's kind of like that this way with voice too, where some people, do you think it's a learned skill based on how they grew up, or they literally grew up with that?
That
they grew
is
up
a
with not
really
doing
good question.
very much.
It's a fantastic question.
It's hard to know, like, how the brain develops or anything that would be more outside of just the way the atmosphere is in your home or your community, the bubble that you're in growing up, your sphere of influence. I definitely think sphere of influence can change what you're good at, like what you feel wired to be good at, just growing up from a young age. But I also think that there's a level of just like chemistry.
Yeah, totally.
Your brain being built for certain things.
A level that you start at.
I hate to answer that with both, but that's my answer.
Right, yeah. I mean, it is hard to question to answer, but I find it really interesting because if you were to just remove the aspect of the variations, right, of how people grow up, just remove that entirely. In an ideal, perfect world, are people different, like uniquely talented in different areas?
So removed from their environment. Would they be
in just
same?
like the perfect environment, or not necessarily perfect, just ideal?
Yeah,
like almost flat.
I don't know. That's a tough topic. I think. I think that we're nothing without our environment.
Yeah. Right.
I really don't think we are anything without our environment.
I think there's something. I think there's proclivity that's inherent in like your actual biological makeup will lend you towards certain, personality, right, and tendencies, but that's largely influenced by the environment that you're in. And so I don't think it has to be.
Here's like a plain example, I guess. Like, let's say you have a singer who grows up and she's extremely talented. She has a great voice, but she grew up in kind of a painful environment. So she sings about maybe hope, maybe a lot of pain versus happiness or something.
Right. So your style is built from.
So maybe your style is different.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But she could equally sing, a different type of genre or something.
But what would be the reason for her being completely and totally, hopelessly tone deaf? Right? So that's the other point we were talking
I
about.
had no idea where you're going with that. Is it tone deaf?
Right. Tone
Yeah.
deaf. I mean, if she just couldn't sing at all, and no teacher in the world could teach her how
Yeah.
to hear herself. I don't know if I actually fully believe in that. I think maybe you could teach anybody, but it could take a lot of time and a lot of energy. So, yeah, I don't know the answer to the question. I'm just thankful that
good.
I have music, and I think FKJ is brilliant, and I think he's talented. So even if you're talented like FKJ at music, I don't think you have to also be talented as a videographer to make videos like he does. So this is where collaboration could come into play. If you have time and, the willingness to learn both of those skills, that's great. All three of us have dabbled in music and cameras.
Or you might be a control freak,
Right.
Exactly.
And you want to take, because especially with me, I'm a designer, right? And I love everything that has to do with brand consistency. When I find an artist who does more, when I see that they're doing a lot more with other areas of creativity, not just music, right? Video design. I hear that. I read that FKJ also painted one of his album artwork.
I saw
Really?
that too.
Yeah.
It was one of the more recent ones, like
I think Lang.
Yeah.
Which is why I mentioned the essential oils. But
True artist.
true. But the reason he named it Lang Lang was because it was a room. It was the studio that he was in.
that they recorded in. Yeah.
I was like, oh, I thought it was an essential. I thought it was because of the essential oil. Shout out to the essential oils.
Right.
But yeah, so brand consistency, right? In terms of visuals, music, and so just that having that brand consistency. But that's why I mentioned the control freak thing.
So do you think you need to be more careful with who you collaborate with? Or is it just a communication thing?
I think it depends because your brand might be collaborating with everyone. So I think that it can vary.
So it's more about being consistent about how you portray yourself, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Totally. Like, so this happened actually 2 days ago, but I was invited to be on a music video.
Oh, nice.
Actually at 11:02.
Okay.
And I turned it down just because I wasn't sure, even like early on, right? And this is not for everyone, right? So someone might want to just explore and just kind of go with it.
Right.
But the artist is not really like where I'm heading, right? And it was actually really hard for me to say no. Because I wanted to, I want to do all of it. Like I just want to say yes to all of it. Mm-hmm. But I think that I'm kind of learning to, I want to hone my craft and my, just have that brand consistency for myself,
Yeah.
and that image, I guess. But even early on, because I feel like FKJ, right? Like you won't see him, you see him doing exactly what he's doing right now.
Right.
Just at an earlier stage, right? It's been very consistent.
That's
Right.
That's also something that I've heard him talk about in terms of how he would like to portray himself. He talks a lot about authenticity being something that's really important to him. Saying, which Cameron, you might actually have different thoughts about this, but
Let's go.
I probably do.
if you're having your aim not to be pleasing people, but having your aim as an artist to be just 100% you, because if you're 100% you, then that's 100% you're unique, or no one else has put out anything like that.
I apologize.
I
I
already
was
know.
grinning at you so hard.
I know exactly what you're going to say. And so the other side of that being, if you have pieces that aren't authentically you, then you will get lost in the sea of other people that are releasing the same thing. And so with that, take the floor.
I know where you're going with this, and
I think everyone else does too.
Go ahead.
Okay. If you know yourself, okay, and you're an artist that can maybe figure out who you want to be on certain projects, I don't think it always looks like the exact same thing. I mean, I think that I could do my hair a certain way or wear earrings or dress in a dress or whatever and still be something else on another day. Everything from image to the way that I talk, or, you know, being able to dance one day and then dancing like a really bad dancing white, tall, awkward person the next day. Like,
Are you saying that it's separate from it can be separate from your core identity?
it is separate from your core identity if you want to be a show person. I've seen so many show people not lose themselves, or maybe at first because they were young getting into it, they lose themselves a little bit, but they totally recover and then live the rest of their lives with this maturity of knowing that, you know, they can shape themselves to whatever they want to shape themselves for the sake of the show they're putting on, the art they're doing, or who they're trying to speak to.
So I think there's an art to that, actually. There's an art to the showmanship, right, aspect.
Yeah.
For sure.
Versus, I think this is where I would disagree in terms of FKJ. I don't think that he's doing it for the show or the audience.
I'd agree with that. He seems genuine.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think there is an art to that. I mean, look at actors, right? Mm-hmm. Like actors, that they should not bring if they're doing, the Joker, right? Like if you're acting as
Right.
Joker, you don't bring that home, right?
And sadly, some, you know,
And
do.
some do, and
Yeah.
it's dangerous.
But as a musician or as any sort of performer, there does seem to be a level of exaggerating the parts of you that would make you stand out.
If you have a desire to know everyone that you meet, you know, on the street, or thousands of random people on the internet that you'll never meet, but you get to maybe know them and let them get to know you a little bit, there's a value in that. There's an authenticity in that. It's founded in relationship. You enjoy other human beings. Not everybody is like that to that degree of like being really high on your priority list. These relationships between people that you don't really know. Again, you might never meet. That's a funny thing with just online followings, is that online you're letting people get to know you. You're letting them into your personal life. You have like, 500 followers, and you're just like sharing with them every little thing about your day.
Yeah, it's weird.
And there are a lot of people that honestly, that comes from a true place. Tanner, I think you're like this, where you like community and relationships with everyone that you meet. And there's that with me too. I just don't think that, that's the only way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that for me, I love it because, I mean, we got a message that I showed you this morning of somebody saying,
Yeah.
like, your music inspired me to move across the country. And
I was like, yes!
it's like, that's exactly what we wanted. And so it's just like little stories like that
Yeah.
are the things that help me to see for our music, despite us wanting to be huge or make it as an artist, each
Air
of
quotes.
those individual followers or individual listens is a different single person that could be affected in that way by our music. And just keeping that perspective and that kind of thought process towards it helps me to see a lot of value in it. It helps
That's
you
cool.
keep going, all that.
It's actually very much the opposite for me.
Really?
It's like so opposite.
explain.
Really? And actually,
Well,
as you explain
yeah.
this, I had a question, which was, what do you want from your music? I was meaning to
So
ask
it
you.
kind of ties in.
Yeah, it definitely ties into that. But I would say that I guess it's like a little bit of like two parts, but the aspect of community, right? It's very hard for me to like focus on that like entirely. And for me, like music's always been music's always been my first love. That's for sure. Like I played violin, and then I kind of went off and started working in product design and all that. And then I'm kind of back, and getting into the whole production side of things is kind of seeing like the creations, right, of music and kind of like that journey. Finally, like having a place to live, right? But I think that when it comes to the community aspect to it, I like almost like hide from that. And that's almost a part of the brand. And I try to like, not necessarily the engaging. It's not that I don't want to. It's that it takes so much energy from my creativity and like the craft that I'm like trying to, like that whole craft. If I had 0 followers, I would still follow it.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes
like
sense.
I would still do that because that's what I love to do.
Well, and there's a lot for us to learn from that with,
For
you know,
sure.
it's the picture profile on your camera as you're shooting. It's the way you dress. It's the
100%,
lighting. It's an
Yeah.
aesthetic that you
Right.
want to keep going the whole time.
Yeah.
When people say don't meet your heroes, you're actually opening the door of possibility to maybe being someone's hero because there's just that right amount of image that they get to look at. And there's value in that.
Totally. The thing that is still very like difficult to balance out is the engaging, is the like, I still want to sometimes, you know, I get on Instagram or like see what other people are making. Like even you guys, I see the content you're coming out with. I'm like, wow, this is awesome. I don't do that.
I would
much.
say most artists that I love and respect and follow don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most artists don't
Yeah.
engage with all of their listeners. They're too busy doing them.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Which
because it's really
for-
time consuming.
Well, that's the thing for us is that,
Yeah.
you know, we have the time. We aren't necessarily anywhere in terms of following or anything like that. Like, of course, there's growth and there's all that, but we have the opportunity and the time to respond to people that comment on our posts, and so it's like, who are we to not?
That's one point. I just think that like what I struggle with is the idea of my real desire. I mean, I go to bed thinking of this. I wake up thinking of this. I want to be getting new skills that I can use. And that takes time. Like you're both ahead of me in producing. I'm wanting to learn how to draw for a number of reasons that I won't get into right now, but they tie into Spondiferous. I'm happy with where I've gotten as a videographer, but the point is that there are a lot of skills to use that all tie into this as being this one-man army. Well, with
Yeah.
us, two-man army.
One thing that I found very helpful, especially for myself in terms of like learning new stuff,
Yeah.
just because in the past like year, I really feel like I've honed like where I want to be with production and like learning Ableton and stuff and in the live looping stuff. That stuff like kind of clicked later though. Like it was like 3 years of just sitting in my, doing like lo-fi beats, you know, sitting in my bedroom doing lo-fi beats with Ableton. But then later everything kind of started to click and I'm like nowhere near like, where does this chord go? You know, like when we were trying to plug the Digitact in earlier, you know, like, is it left or is it right? You know, when I was doing the live, I needed Tanner, you know, like to hook the speakers up.
We all need you, Tanner.
Right.
Thank you.
But when it
I'm
comes,
just glad to be needed.
You're the golden boy. Sorry, keep going.
when it comes to the production stuff though, like I feel like I've gotten to a point where I can continually learn much faster now. And it's not like those big leaps. It took like 3 years at least. But the thing I was going to say was to learn new things. One thing that's extremely overwhelming is you don't have to know all of it at once. You could literally do so much with it if you only knew 10% of it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Because that can definitely be something that happens when you look at someone like FKJ and they go through, you know, even the massive video or just any of his live session videos that you see him do, and he's just going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and you see insane musical prowess, but then also just full command of how to capture it with Ableton, with all the live looping, and all that can really quickly get overwhelming to the point where you feel like, how on earth do I even
100%.
start to get there?
The other thing too is really quick is perspective. I think like if you wanted to learn, like who is to say that you're not a really good videographer?
Right.
You know, if you were to show me some of the work and I'm like, whoa, this looks amazing, right? This is great. This works really well. You're already doing more than someone who's not doing it at all. So I always go into that.
Right. And
that
we all
mindset.
start at the bottom.
Yeah, we all start at the bottom. I always go into the mindset of learning something new. This is what I'm going to do when I'm trying to learn saxophone.
Yeah, there you go.
next week.
Yeah.
But it's always like, you know, FKJ, I think for like a professional saxophone player, if he were to listen to FKJ, I'm sure he'd have so many critiques.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a
So
good
many
point.
critiques.
Yeah.
And that is perspective, right? That's perspective. And I think that's important to have before learning new things.
Let's get into how you film one of his videos. I mean, if you just hand a camera to a guy, okay, which is obviously what he's doing. He's not the one behind the camera.
Right, you can see it moving. Yeah.
Even though he understands videography, you can't be the artist in front of the camera and the artist behind the camera at the same time if you're going to do it his style, which is what we're going for today. He has this guy just moving around the whole time, like on a Ronin S or Ronin SC.
Yeah. So
type.
you can see that through that you can see that it's planned out. Like there's a level of improv to his approach. There's a level of just playing with the things that he's already discovered.
But I bet he's practiced that exact set dozens of times
For sure.
with those other people. It's probably been a headache.
Yeah.
They're getting their bob on, their groove on. They're really looking like they're into it and that they're improving. They hit the right note and their face goes, ooh, you know, and you're like, wow, this is their first take and they're killing it.
Yeah.
And it's totally not. You know that the videographer has probably coordinated every step that he's going to take, even though he probably doesn't take them all perfectly because he's a human. And
But then that's the other thing. I'm just always coming back to perspective, right?
yeah.
Imagine FKJ messing up.
Yeah.
He's probably messed up so many times, and you
times.
wouldn't know it.
Because
Yeah,
he won't
not
show
gonna
it on
show
camera,
those. Yeah.
which is a good point.
But even if he does mess up on camera, right? To him messing up, right? To him messing up is like, oh, and then he has to fix something, and it didn't go perfectly, right? I'm sure that's happened as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
It's
just that.
There's a level. That's the other thing is as your level of expertise grows in each field, your scope for what is a mistake
Right.
becomes a lot broader and
Right.
so or more harsh, I guess. Where for him messing up could be, a very slight, didn't go to the right chord, but still went to one that works.
Right, sure. Maybe he input the beat a different way.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to vibe with this.
Yeah.
right.
And so it's a little bit more of
So the whole
evolution.
thing isn't completely scripted.
Right.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Because there's something fun about kind of being there in the moment as a musician up on stage.
Which is another thing that we've gotten the opportunity to start to mess around with a little bit with the in-ears and all that.
That's cool. Yeah, with the click track and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're not there yet. I'm trying to script everything.
Because Cameron loves to just absolutely, no, what was that little thing that you just played? I liked that. Put that, do it every time.
We're voice memoing this exact little riff, and you're
Yeah,
going to play it
right.
just like
Not just
that.
be like, but then I don't get to find more riffs.
I think there's something with live looping though. There's I think FKJ is just at a god level of live looping.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to it where, at least from my limited knowledge, my first live looping
Your
experience-
non-god level
Yeah,
looping.
down here level,
Immortal level.
right, is that you have to give yourself a fence of kind of like a limit, right, of what you can improv, right, like a little bit of headroom for improv, but then there's still, you have to give yourself an environment. You have to create the environment.
It's like setting
Yeah.
aside
So you
a
set
moment.
the template up.
Okay. Yeah.
So one thing I learned with live looping is, like even the Tadao, right, music video with Tadao, with Masego, you can see he's like, okay, he goes to the drums, he comes back. The first scene he was flipping the passport open, right?
Right.
Like recorded that
to
in.
get the
Yeah, that was
percussion.
Yeah, it was cool. But he kept going back and forth. So they've obviously practiced that. But like what we read about was how it was all very improv first. And they probably did that, right? There's a template. They started with a template. They were just jamming out. And Masego, I can guarantee you, they didn't talk about this, right? They didn't talk about, hey, I'm going to go play the drums now. I think he just went over and started playing.
And that's where that came from.
That's where
Yeah.
it comes from. But the template helps, right?
Yeah.
You have to have the template. I spent 2 days straight not making any music, right? Just all the template is the same. Every time I have guitar, it's pink. Every time I have percussion, it's yellow.
Super
right?
helpful.
Super helpful. the way I name the structures, right? Like my naming convention is super weird if anybody were to look at it. But to me, it makes sense.
You're
right?
like, I got it.
Right, yeah.
Just don't try it yourself.
But the template is important. Once you have the template, then you can go wild, right?
And so it's doing a lot of work on the front end so that you can set yourself up to be able to just freely create when the inspiration is there.
Yeah, exactly.
I have an out there idea. What do y'all think about, just in regards to even us talking earlier about your atmosphere growing up and that changing, all sorts of things about you, even maybe shaping your potential in a sense. What about staying single? Just staying single for a long time. Because I learned that
it's played a role in my life.
he didn't get married until he was the same month as his 29th birthday. So I don't technically know if he was 28 or 29. But there's a lot of people that I know that are already married.
Yep.
They're like 19 or 20 or 22.
Yeah.
I have a couple friends that have kids. 22-year-old friends, they have kids. I don't know what to do with that. I'm not ready to be like Uncle Cameron, coming to the house. I'm too young for that.
Right.
Would you all agree that there is maybe an educated approach, which I don't want to like say this in a weird way, but just to maybe choose to be single might be a productive choice in honing your skills to be as big as FKJ wound up being?
Yes.
Has that been a choice that you've
very
made?
Easy. It has been a choice that I've made, but I've had relationships. My past relationship was 3 years already. And in that, there was a lot of, I was still learning music. I was doing that, but now, like the potential, I don't owe anyone anything. The people that I see the most right now is my family, and I barely see them.
Right.
Like I'm in my cave, right. So
Just working.
Kind of going back to the question though. Yes, absolutely. I mean, like, if I was doing this since I was like 22 or 23, then there would be so much more time, right?
Granted, you did
Doing the
mention
same
stepping
thing.
away to do graphic design, and I think that isn't a step in the wrong direction, since now you still have those skills.
Totally.
And you still implement them. Like when I stepped away and did insurance, I feel like that was something that maybe didn't garner me with many skills. Graphic design, though, there's a lot of implementable, useful things.
It's still in
there.
the creative realm.
It's something that helps you now.
Totally.
With
Absolutely.
The music side of things. That's something that we found with, getting proficient in videography.
Yep.
Hence the setup.
No. Yeah.
Multi-useful.
It also like makes me appreciate, going back to like the brand consistency thing, right?
Yeah.
I am a control freak when it comes to like, I just have a specific way that like I want to create it. That's why like I'll do the videos too, right? I'll do the videos, I'll edit them. I'll make sure they're colored the way that I want them to be colored.
And I think as an artist, you have to take ownership.
Totally.
Yeah.
Even with like, okay, FKJ, he has someone else do the videography.
Yeah.
Who knows where he found the guy, at a local college, at a local film club or theater or whatever.
Some indie
or,
videographer.
he knows people, who knows. To have ownership even of what they do, rather than just saying, hey, you're the videographer, make this look good. To actually be able to say, this is what I'm going for, that takes thought and energy. And unless you mentally prepare yourself to give that energy and spend time thinking about that, kind of being a leader of your own image, your own craft, your own art, even if you're not the one that's hands-on, you're just directing.
At the same time, I think that in terms like when it comes to collaboration with other artists, not just music-wise, but video, I think it's, and just creatives in general. And I think this comes from working with a lot of clients. Clients will hire you either for you to create something or for them to lead you on what they want to create, what they want you to create, right? But I've stayed away from clients who basically like they're trying to lead They're saying like every time I send over a logo or a color, or something like, hey, can you change this to a different color? There's a reason why I picked that color, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why. So you're either hiring a creative for that or not. So I feel like in FKJ's position, he's leading in what his vision is, but the people behind it, the creatives behind it, they're coming up with it, right? The people he's choosing.
They're imposing their style.
Yeah, they're imposing their style because he's choosing them to impose their style. Like he's choosing the right people.
Where do y'all think he gets his locations, his filming spots? Do you think he owns the house with the giant window with the freaking tropical rainforest right outside?
That would be nice.
I doubt it.
He doesn't. I don't think he owns that one.
Imagine this.
I know that
He went to it.
He said that he lives in a very isolated place in France, and so I would imagine he has some place somewhat like that. But there's also a huge value to just knowing people, as we've found in the videos that we've made. We've gotten shots at locations that we never would have had.
Well, we quote unquote collected keys when we were in Salida, Colorado, which we've talked about before and won't talk about here. But I mean, if you're FKJ and you own such a cool place with the giant windows and the rainforest outside, why not make more videos there? I think that this is accessible to all of us. We could rent an Airbnb for a weekend just for the sake of the shot. You look it up. It's an amazing place. It's going to cost you $1,000. You've been saving up for it. You go out there for 2 or 3 days and you shoot this incredible thing. Like everybody watching is going to be like, where do you end up finding this studio space? How does this even work?
Yeah,
another option to go along the routes of what our old mentors would probably recommend. Go to a very fancy neighborhood and just start knocking on doors, asking people if you can shoot a video in their house. And eventually somebody's going to say yes.
Well, that's right.
wild.
That's wild. That is what they said. Yeah, they've done that.
Wow.
The Airbnb makes me feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
It also costs more money.
I have this idea of, because downtown there's a lot of abandoned warehouses.
Yeah.
That would be sweet.
That'd be super sweet. Would that be something that, like, if you filmed in there and somebody would somebody like call the cops on you?
Oh, no.
Or no?
There's so many that are just so abandoned. Like,
How do you find those?
I'm sure we'd have to read about them.
I feel like if I Googled it right now, like abandoned warehouses,
You couldn't find them. You would
You
have
just
to
gotta
drive
explore.
through them. Yeah, like I know exactly where if you are already. I have this one spot that I'm going to take.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm just going to go out there, put my, camera and see what happens.
I can't wait
That'll
to
be
see
fun.
it.
Yeah.
Do either of you desire to be signed to a record label?
That's very interesting because I was thinking about that yesterday.
I feel like artists go back and forth all the time with this. It's a struggle.
I was thinking about that yesterday. I think I've always been no, just because of how much I want to control, right, the brand and all that. And then
it would seem like the antithesis to your motto. Yeah.
Totally. And then you hear like horror stories from it, right? And people being stuck and not being able to create, what they want to create, or the record label trying to control their brand, right?
Right.
So I think it would be no, right? But how much money are we talking?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I feel like record labels are an area that lack education for a lot of people. I still haven't learned all about them because it gets pretty complicated. But I was interested to see that FKJ was signed to a booking agency.
Not to a record label.
I don't think so. I don't think it's quite the same. I think the
Booking
one
agency just being somebody who books some shows.
Yeah, I think the one thing that he's signed into is a group of people that doesn't even seem to be a big enough company. I'm so sorry if they're a huge company and I'm just being a jerk. It doesn't even seem to be a big enough company.
Little bitty company.
To have a blue, text logo in Wikipedia linking to their own Wikipedia page. It's just black text. So whoever they are, who knows? I didn't get to learn about them because, Wikipedia. So imagine the one group that you sign into is a group that just books a bunch of shows for you.
Which
it's like, hey, I'm going to fill up your calendar.
Would clearly seem like they don't have any sort of ownership in his music.
But they probably would take, I don't know if it'd be 20% of everything you earn, or 25 or 30 or 15. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Only for the bookings, like only for when he plays.
Yeah, just, hey, we'll book you, I don't know, 80, 90 shows a year. That'd be pretty cool.
That'd be insane. Yeah.
To set up all your tours, kind of single-handedly, that would be a group of people that would make you a full-time musician.
Yeah.
Seems very organic.
And in terms of hearing people say, build your own team, you know somebody that could be your advertising, marketing guy, have a booking guy, a manager,
Right.
Yeah.
a lawyer is a big one. And then you have producers, engineers, all those other things that come along with a record label that we might not need because we're trying to figure out that side of it ourselves.
Right. At what stage does an artist do that?
I think more and more it's become, or not even just become, but a large piece of it is, I think that a lot of record labels are looking for people who have already proven somewhat that they're able to kind of independently assemble a fan base. And so it's less of them saying, we're going to turn this person into a star.
Yeah, we have the marketing team for you to build your audience and stuff.
It's what have you done and how can we take it and just elevate you to the next level.
Well, if you're aware of this idea of building a team, you could write down on paper which team members you're going to go for first, second, third. Like, say your very first person you're going to go for is somebody to help you make merch because you don't do art, maybe. And then the second person you're going to go for is a booking person. That'd be like a really simple plan. But if you have merch and then you go on tour, you'll look legit.
So mom, sister.
Yeah.
You've got it. Yeah.
Mom, sister, friend number two.
Yeah, right.
Right. I feel like if you just have the plan in mind, that's something that you could do at almost any stage. You just start writing songs like you're going to go on a tour, practicing songs like you're playing live rather than just, not plugged in, just sitting with your guitar or whatever.
That's something that we did forever until we actually had our in-ears.
Yeah, like within the last 2 months, we discovered the idea of just live from the living room. That's our practice now.
I think it's made us playing together more like a tighter set.
Yeah.
To be honest, we're playing together again. We actually went a long time
of just, we would just record things individually.
Separately.
Yeah, exactly.
But we didn't play together.
Yeah.
And it's reminding me that when we were 15 or 16 years old, we used to play together all the time.
We'd be like, let's play through this song that we just finished.
We were ignorant enough to not think about plugging in, to not think about technology. I mean, you'd be on piano or ukulele, I'd be on guitar, and we would play through those songs like we were going to go, rip apart a stadium.
Right.
So the analogy here is that technology separates us.
There we go. Bringing it home.
I wrote a song about that. No. Yeah. Technology separates us. That's a great ending note here.
Yeah,
we should end it on that. But who would be the first three people you'd add to your team? Because this is, I think, a really helpful idea.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Right.
Can't be your mom or your sister.
Right. Man, it wouldn't be anyone for me. And that's why I asked the stage right now, the stage, because I feel like for me, the stage would have to go for a while until that happened. Until
Such a lone wolf.
Truly needed them.
Yeah.
What are you working towards to get to the next stage?
I think it's just craft.
Okay.
I'm
the actual skill.
Just all of the whole, it's all skill. It's all just, and I'm like, I can't do it with people.
Okay.
And that's something that I've learned. That is something that I've learned because I have tried that before. And it doesn't work.
That self-awareness is a huge thing too.
Yeah.
Is a lot of people might try to force themselves into working the way that they feel like they are supposed to work.
Totally.
And so to acknowledge that, like, no, I work better this way.
100%.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I would say you do a great job with graphic design. You do a great job with aesthetic and imagery. Like, you obviously have an eye for that side of art. But I feel that there are a lot of people out there that are like you in that sense. And this is almost like a difference between Jacob Collier and
Describe him.
I sent you a video today. They did like
Jacob Collier and Charlie Puth.
Charlie Puth.
Oh,
Okay. I watched a long video today. One of my favorite videos I've seen in a while of them just FaceTiming with each other. And Jacob Collier is just so artistic. He runs circles around people with his artistic sense.
You don't know where he is.
Yeah. Right.
Charlie Puth is different in one way. He understands being commercially viable.
Totally.
Bringing things down to earth.
Actually what it takes to, be successful
Yeah.
in a commercial market.
Right. There's a way to brand. Yeah. There are people who know how to brand themselves that way, how to market themselves like that.
And on the call, he mentioned to Jacob Collier, like, you should make an album that's a pop album, an album that people would like, not an album where you're just, stretching your creativity.
Super experimental. Yeah.
And Jacob Collier was like, and you should make an album
That's
where you're
experimental.
where you're just experimenting and using your mind.
I love that, yeah.
And they're on two different pages, and they've both made it a great distance. But I think Jacob Collier is such a rare case. You cannot bet on being him.
Yeah.
I don't think we could ever make an episode on him because there's no way to be Jacob Collier.
Yeah, talk about like mastery of skill with FKJ, like Jacob Collier's.
No. I'm talking about how rare it is for someone like him to be famous.
Oh, yeah.
Based
Successful.
Yeah, right.
Because he focuses on the wrong thing. He doesn't focus on the commercially viable thing in terms of being successful, is what I mean by right or wrong.
Right, totally.
Which is where some people would come in with saying that's where his raw, authentic self would get him, with him being such a different person. But
I was really roasting you behind my compliment, saying,
I love that.
You have a really good eye, but when do you take that step to doing, the next good step forward towards being commercially successful, which might be growing your team?
I think that's coming. I think that's coming because I can't do both. That's my problem. I can't try to hone the craft, right, and be good at what I'm trying to do, live looping, some production, understand my musical genre, right, for my albums, right, this kind of content creation, kind of putting myself on the map first, and selling it. I'm trying to sell that.
It's a lot to juggle,
creating, right? I'm trying to sell like that I put so much craft into, right? The quality of songs, right?
Yeah.
All that. Not necessarily explaining the journey. And maybe that is a problem, but I can't do both.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do both because I think in that process, a lot of that craft and a lot of the quality is lost.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair point. Yeah.
Which is another reason why I'll say, and this is not necessarily to put, Charlie Puth's music down, but like I really like his production, I really like his quality. But how different would it be if he wasn't making it for people who like that, right? For a specific audience. How different? I'm sure he has in the archive so much weird stuff.
Yeah.
That he does not put out because it's not a part of his brand now, right?
Right.
So he has this image that he does keep up, and he's really good at it.
Prioritizing brand.
Yeah.
Well, and you can see that when you see him talk with Jacob Collier. His face says it all, of like, he's on Earth and Jacob Collier is not.
Yeah.
Jacob Collier is in the clouds.
Right.
And that's why I'm blown away that he's ever made it to where he's made it again commercially. But Jacob Collier is also a really hard worker. He posts a lot of videos that are quality videos, interesting videos. He has communicated well with his fan base, grown a really solid fan base, like as a YouTuber. It's a completely different world than Charlie Puth. But it's the same thing that I'm on the flip side of what you're doing, right? And I might not even be on the right side for me. I'm trying to figure out how to document the journey,
right,
And I don't know if it's right or not, or if I'm wasting time. It's hard to know what is wasting time and what's making the best use of your time.
I think that, and this is kind of what I struggle with, because I do want to document the journey, but the journey that's going to be documented for me is literally just camera set up. I'm working on stuff. If you're interested in that, you'll watch it.
It's less like what unique thing
like,
can I think
hey,
to post
let me
today?
show you what I'm doing.
Okay, yeah.
Let me show you what I'm kind of going through, and it's less of that. And I've thought of doing more of that in terms of like 30-day challenge, make a song, right? One day, each day, right? And it places that into like now I have to do this song for that day instead of I feel a certain way, I'm going to make this song because that's just what comes out, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like really hard to do both for me at least.
Which they're just, it's kind of another point of different approaches where someone like that, or someone even like FKJ, which I heard him talk about this in interviews, he tends, I was surprised to hear this, but he tends to try to wait to write until he's really inspired.
Right, yeah.
And so like
I heard that too.
it's something that you and I, Cameron,
That
have
frustrates me.
abided by is, inspiration will come when it finds you working, that type of mentality. And so it's like, instead of waiting for inspiration, going and making inspiration happen.
No, my take is even different. You have no control of inspiration for the most part. When it comes, you've got to respect it, because when it goes, you might not ever get back what that little moment could give you.
And that's a big piece to where it ties in, where he's saying like, lean into the fullness of like your humanity, your emotions, and everything that you're feeling in the moment to allow that inspiration to happen. And so more so just like what you were saying, when inspiration strikes, don't let it be passive,
Don't just open the notes tab on your phone and type
the idea.
There was a girl, and then period. And you're like, I was feeling something, but I'm going to write that later. I'll remember how that made me feel.
I'll remember my
and what
inspiration.
That means.
You're not going to
Later, you're going to read it, and you're going to feel nothing.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a useless sentence.
And you're going to be like, that's terrible.
So you need to create when the inspiration comes, not just jot down a bullet point on what you're feeling.
Yep.
And what frustrated me about what he said, because so far it sounds like I'm in agreement with him, it's that you should also be able to create inspiring work in a moment of feeling no inspiration. I've seen a number of artists that I really look up to do that.
Yeah.
Particularly when drawing. They're able to draw something from their professional, years of experience. They are a professional drawer, artist, and they can create something that they can put music behind it. They can do voiceover behind it. They can make an animation. They can inspire the socks off of you. And when you look at the behind the scenes of them doing it, it's a day job. They were there 8 hours, 10-hour days, just smoking a cigarette and almost hating it.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, this changed my life. And seeing that behind the scenes story isn't help that.
Might be disappointing.
Yeah.
Right.
But you what?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think this is really good. I love this. This is right up my alley. In terms of like productivity and kind of life hacks, like how can you keep that momentum? How can you keep that state of flow, right? Of like creation, not just with music, but with design. This is what with design, I struggle with the same thing too. Like I sit down and I'm trying to, I go through so much inspiration, right? Design inspiration. I'm going through that and I don't create anything. Just a bunch of ideas of like, oh, that looks cool. Mm-hmm. That looks cool.
Nothing that's settled on.
That looks great. Yeah. And then like the moments where I've been able to like sit down and actually create, right? Have been those moments where they just feel so random, right? They feel so random. I'm sitting down and then it just like 2 hours go by and I'm just like completely zoned. And to try to replicate that every time is difficult. But what I will say is that I feel like, so with my limited experience with Ableton, just like 3 years, right? I feel like you do get to a certain place. Like I kind of blindly was like kind of almost mindless, going through the motions of, okay, yep, did that, learned next. And that's not very artistic, right? You're just kind of going through and just kind of,
The checklist.
going through the checklist.
Yeah.
But you do get to a certain place where you feel confident enough to say, not even vocalize it, not say it necessarily, just know that this is art now. Like you can move forward with this and you can be confident about it. And that confidence kind of like, other people see that confidence too, right?
Yeah.
Because like FKJ, right? He played a note. I can play a note, right? The way he played it. Okay. The way he added the effects. Okay. Like the way now
That's
he's
time.
used.
There are
That's
layers
time.
to
There's
it,
layers to it.
Yeah.
Like you can play guitar, but like you kind of start honing your craft, and you don't play it like other people do. You just started to do something, and you have that confidence now, right? You played it a certain way, and then you had this audience that was like, "Wow, that's great." And you're like, "That's okay, cool."
The way that it comes together when you specifically are the one that's doing
you
it.
invented that.
Yeah.
My favorite image of a live show I've ever seen is when he's playing in France and there's everybody sitting around with headphones on.
in the circle.
That's so cool.
Also the confidence there of like, I want them to hear everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
I remember there have been shows that we've played where I've been glad that the speakers are muffly because I don't want them to hear everything.
Totally. Yep.
it's sad. That hurts me to remember. It's way too real. I just love the idea, headphones. I'm sure that they were quality headphones and every sound he was making.
Sure.
I plug in my headphones. I'm like, I want to be there. I'm listening
Right, I wanna be in it.
It's flawless. And it's emotional.
Yeah.
I love what he's done. And that's where we're headed. That's a good next step. Maybe 12, 15 steps from now. Try to do a live show with all headphones.
Yeah,
That'd
that
be
would be
interesting.
awesome.
We don't have 50 people, but we might do live from the living room with 6 or 8
There you go.
people
Yeah.
and do a string of headphones.
There we go.
All right, that's a plan.
Or a warehouse.
Or
There
a
we go.
warehouse.
Warehouse.
We'll connect with you on that one.
Yeah.
That'd
Nice.
be good.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thanks for joining us for this
No
episode. I
worries.
think that's a good
It's
place
fun.
to.
What is like? I mean, granted, not that there would be a whole lot of people listening probably that would hear this to go to, but for the people listening, where can people find you?
Oh, probably my Instagram. I'm still building my Spotify, but that I think is hopefully is coming out tomorrow.
Okay.
My single,
Yes.
Relevance.
Awesome.
Well, let's hear what the Spotify is called.
So the
username.
Spotify is YASO Music. YASO Music.
Okay.
YASO
Awesome.
Music.
And that's also your handle on Instagram, right?
That is my handle on Instagram, and it's Spotify is going to be YASO.
Okay. Okay. Awesome.
And SoundCloud too. Also,
There we
if you
go.
want to see some of the weird unreleased stuff.
The private links.
Right. Exactly.
I'm always wanting more of those private links. on
Yeah.
SoundCloud.
Yeah.
That's the funny
I'll
thing.
have to send
People
you
never
more.
see all the behind the scenes.
No,
do
I
they?
have
Yeah.
like so many private private links.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks again
I'll
for
send you
joining
the
us.
archive.
This was fun.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Cool.